She was only 7 years old, and her teacher spit at her, right there in front of the whole class, called her a distraction, made her say her name again and again while the other kids laughed, just because of the color of her skin, a grown woman bullying a child. But what that teacher didn't know is that the quiet little girl she tried to humiliate had a father, and not just any father. A man trained to take down corruption with a pen, not a punch. When he walks into the school the next morning, calm as ever, the entire building freezes, because justice isn't coming loud, it's coming legal. And what happens next? It doesn't just shake the school, it breaks a whole town wide open. The morning sun painted long shadows across Maple Hollow Elementary's red brick walls as Marcus Johnson walked his daughter Ava toward the entrance. Her yellow dress caught the light, bright as her usual smile, though today her small hand gripped his a little tighter than normal. "Remember what we talked about?" Marcus asked, his voice gentle. Ava nodded, her neat braids bouncing. "Be myself, be kind, and learning is an adventure." Marcus stopped at the bottom of the steps and knelt to straighten the butterfly pin on her dress. "That's my brave girl. I'll be here to pick you up at 3 o'clock sharp." Inside Ms. Whitman's second-grade classroom, colorful posters covered the walls. A "Be Kind" banner hung crookedly above the whiteboard, its corner coming unstuck. The room smelled of chalk dust and hand sanitizer. Ms. Cheryl Whitman stood at her desk, her hair stiffly styled and her posture rigid in her grey cardigan. Her smile, which had been warm for the other students, froze the moment she saw Ava. "Class," Ms. Whitman's voice cut through the morning chatter. "We have a new student. Stand up, girl." Ava rose slowly from her desk in the back row, her shoulders straight despite the tremor in her hands. "Tell the class your name," Ms. Whitman ordered. "Ava Johnson," she said softly. "Speak up. I can't hear you with all that mumbling." "Ava Johnson," she repeated a little louder. Ms. Whitman's lips twisted. Again, properly this time. "Ava Johnson." Her voice cracked slightly. Again. With each repetition, some students began to giggle. Ava's name started to sound strange, disconnected, like it didn't belong to her anymore. In the doorway, Lila Hart, the library volunteer, paused with her cart of books. Her grey hair was tied back in a neat bun, and her kind eyes narrowed at the scene unfolding before her. Ms. Whitman stepped closer to Ava's desk. There was a sharp sound, a deliberate tisk that became something worse, and a wet spot appeared on the floor near Ava's new shoes. "You don't belong in my classroom," Ms. Whitman whispered, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. Then, raising her voice, "Class, eyes forward. We don't waste time on distractions." Ava's small gasp echoed in the sudden silence. Out in the hallway, Frank Ruiz, the veteran custodian, looked up from his mop at the sound. Lila stepped into the room, her hands clasped to stop their shaking. "Ms. Whitman, I was wondering if Ava could help me in the library this morning. We have new books to sort." "Absolutely not," Ms. Whitman snapped. "This is instructional time. I didn't do anything wrong, and she needs to learn our routines." That evening, Marcus noticed how Ava pushed her mac and cheese around her plate, her favorite dinner untouched. The kitchen was quiet except for the tick of the clock and the soft whir of the ceiling fan. "Baby girl," he said gently, "did something happen at school today?" Ava's fork clattered against her plate. Her lower lip trembled as she looked up at her father, tears welling in her eyes. "Ms. Whitman made me say my name over and over," she whispered. "The kids laughed, and she, Ava's voice broke. "She spit by my shoes and said I don't belong." Marcus's hands tightened on the edge of the table, but his voice remained steady. He pushed back his chair and opened his arms. Ava ran into them, burying her face against his shoulder. "Listen to me," he said, holding her close. "What happened today was wrong, very wrong, and wrong things get handled the right way." He pulled back to look into her eyes. "First thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to meet with your principal. No yelling, no fighting, just truth. Because you deserve to be safe and respected, just like every other child in that school. Promise?" "I promise, baby girl. We're going to fix this." Later that night, Ava lay in bed, her butterfly nightlight casting soft shadows on the wall. She clutched a piece of paper with a crayon drawing, a bright blue butterfly with yellow-tipped wings. "Is it okay to be scared sometimes?" she asked as Marcus tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "Even butterflies get scared," he said, smoothing her hair. "But they're still brave enough to spread their wings." Marcus kept his hand on Ava's shoulder until her breathing evened out in sleep, her small fingers still holding the drawing. He watched his daughter's peaceful face and silently renewed his promise. Tomorrow would bring change, not with anger, but with the quiet strength of truth and justice. The morning sun cast long shadows across Maple Hollow Elementary's front steps as Marcus and Ava arrived early. Inside the office, the secretary's eyes widened at their presence, but Marcus simply smiled and asked to see Dr. Klein. "Hot chocolate." Marcus pulled out a pink travel mug decorated with butterflies. Ava's small hands wrapped around it gratefully as they settled into the hard plastic chairs. Her patent leather shoes didn't quite reach the floor, swinging back and forth in a nervous rhythm. "Remember what we talked about?" Marcus whispered, straightening Ava's yellow hair bow. She nodded. "Tell the truth, stay brave, just like the butterflies." The office door creaked open and Lila Hart stepped in, her silver hair neatly pinned back. "Good morning, Sweet Pea," she said to Ava, then turned to Marcus. "I saw what happened yesterday. I'm here to help." Before Marcus could respond, Dr. Klein emerged from his office, straightening his tie. "Mr. Johnson, please come in." His smile was practiced, professional, too smooth. Inside the principal's office, family photos and educational certificates covered the walls. Dr. Klein gestured to the chairs facing his desk. "Now, what seems to be the concern?" Marcus kept his voice steady. "Yesterday, Ms. Whitman publicly humiliated my daughter, used racist actions and language, and created an unsafe learning environment." "That's quite an accusation," Dr. Klein said, leaning back. "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." Was there?" Lila interrupted softly. "I saw it happen." Dr. Klein's smile tightened. "Ms. Hart, with all due respect, I'd like a written incident report," Marcus said, "and I need to know what immediate steps you'll take to ensure my daughter's safety." "Well, I suppose we should hear everyone's perspective." Dr. Klein pressed his intercom. "Please send Ms. Whitman in." The teacher strode in moments later, her heels clicking against the tile floor. A smirk played at the corners of her mouth when she saw Ava shrink closer to her father. Marcus stood slowly, reaching into his jacket. "Before we continue, I should properly introduce myself." He held out his identification badge. "I'm Marcus Johnson, State Attorney General." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ms. Whitman's smirk vanished, color draining from her face. Dr. Klein's chair squeaked as he sat up, straighter. I didn't," Ms. Whitman stammered. "Mr. Johnson, Attorney General, sir." Dr. Klein stumbled over his words. "I assure you, we take these matters very seriously. I'll have the paperwork drawn up immediately." "Let's be clear," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here as Ava's father first. To avoid any conflict of interest, I'm requesting an independent investigator handle this matter." Dr. Klein nodded rapidly. Of course, Ms. Whitman will be placed on administrative leave pending review, effective immediately." Ms. Whitman's hands trembled. "You can't just—" "I can and I must," Dr. Klein cut in. "Mrs. Hart, would you be willing to supervise Ava in the library this morning while we process the paperwork?" Lila placed a gentle hand on Ava's shoulder. "We'll find some good books, won't we, honey?" Ava looked up at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "Go, head butterfly. I'll see you after school." As Ava left with Lila, Marcus gathered his briefcase. "I'll need copies of all documentation, Dr. Klein, and I trust you'll handle this professionally." Back at the State Attorney General's office that afternoon, Marcus carefully documented everything in a formal recusal letter. His assistant brought in a stack of messages, all from the school board. The sun was setting when his phone rang. Marcus recognized the number, William Preston, school board chair. "Marcus," Preston's voice oozed false warmth, "let's handle this quietly. You understand how these small-town situations can spiral." "I understand the law, William, and the need for transparency. People might see this as overreach, an abuse of power. You wouldn't want that kind of attention, would you?" Marcus's computer pinged with a notification. Someone had posted in the town's Facebook group, "State AG threatens innocent teacher, power gone too far." "William," Marcus said evenly, "I'm handling this legally and ethically. Good night." He ended the call and stared at his reflection in the darkened window. The real fight, he realized, was just beginning. Light streamed through tall windows in the marble-walled office downtown, catching dust motes as Marcus Johnson spread documents across his desk. His ethics counsel, Sarah Chen, stood beside him, while Deputy AG Tom Riley leaned against a bookshelf. "We're doing this by the book," Marcus said, his pen hovering over the recusal memo. "Complete separation. I'm a father filing a complaint, nothing more." Sarah nodded. "Smart move. The independent investigator from the State Education Department can handle everything. No one can claim you're throwing your weight around. I want Barbara Mills as the child advocate," Marcus added, signing his name with careful strokes. "She's got 20 years' experience helping kids testify. Ava needs someone gentle but strong." Tom straightened. "Already called her. She'll meet Ava tomorrow. Get her comfortable first." Meanwhile, at Maple Hollow Elementary, Frank Ruiz walked beside Ava, his custodian's keys jingling softly. His weathered face creased in a kind smile as they approached the library. "Look who's here," Lila Hart called out, grey curls bouncing as she welcomed them. She'd arranged a cozy corner with a beanbag chair and warm lighting. "This is your special spot, sweetheart. 10 minutes of quiet time before class starts." Ava's small fingers traced the cover of a purple notebook Lila handed her. Butterfly Journal was written in swirling letters. "Sometimes," Lila explained, "when words get stuck inside, drawing helps them fly free." Frank patted the doorframe. "I'll be right outside when you're ready to head to class." In the hallway, parents clustered in whispered conversations, phones lighting up their faces as they shared messages. Some pointed toward the library, their stares making Ava shrink smaller in her chair. "Just keep drawing, honey," Lila murmured, positioning herself between Ava and the door. The substitute teacher, Mrs. Baker, greeted Ava kindly when Frank walked her to class. But throughout the morning, Ava felt eyes on her back, heard the rustle of notes being passed. At lunch, Marcus's shoes clicked purposefully down the hallway to Dr. Klein's office. The principal's smile seemed plastered on. "Mr. Johnson, I assure you—" "Attorney General Johnson in this context," Marcus corrected quietly. "I'm here to formally document Ava's safety plan." He placed a folder on the desk. "Any retaliation, any harassment gets reported immediately. Are we clear?" Dr. Klein's smile slipped. "Surely you understand this is disruptive to our community." "What I understand," Marcus said, "is that my daughter has the right to learn without fear. The law protects that right, whether some people like it or not." After school, Ava climbed into Marcus's car, clutching her purple notebook. She was quieter than usual, but her shoulders looked less tense. "Want to show me what you drew today?" Marcus asked gently. Ava opened to a page where a blue and gold butterfly soared across the paper. Underneath, she'd written one word: brave. Marcus swallowed hard. "That's beautiful, baby girl." Later that night, after Ava was asleep, Marcus walked to his car to grab his briefcase. A white paper fluttered under the windshield wiper. His heart beat faster as he unfolded it, reading the block letters. "Leave our town alone." With steady hands, he pulled an evidence bag from his glove compartment and carefully slipped the note inside. He logged the time and date in his phone, then tucked the bag into a folder marked Incidents. Looking up at Ava's bedroom window, where her butterfly nightlight cast soft shadows, Marcus took a deep breath. They'd known this wouldn't be easy, but they would do it right, with patience, documentation, and unwavering adherence to the law. He wouldn't let anyone see how the note made his hands want to shake, wouldn't give them the satisfaction of making him angry or afraid. The law was on their side, and justice didn't need shouting to prevail. Inside, he checked Ava's door one more time, then added the folder to his briefcase. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but tonight his daughter slept peacefully, her butterfly drawings watching over her dreams. The evening sun cast long shadows across the church parking lot as Marcus guided Ava up the worn wooden steps of First Methodist. The familiar smell of casseroles and coffee wafted from the basement fellowship hall. Ava clutched her father's hand, her yellow hair ribbon matching the butterflies on her cardigan. "Look who's here!" Mrs. Peterson, the choir director, opened her arms wide. "We saved you both a spot at our table." But as they made their way through the crowded room, Marcus noticed the subtle shifts, heads turning away, conversations dropping to whispers. Old friends who'd known him since childhood suddenly became fascinated with their meatloaf. Lila Hart waved them over to a corner table decorated with paper flowers. "There's my butterfly girl," she said warmly, patting the seat next to her. "I heard they're serving your favorite, mac and cheese." While Marcus filled their plates, Lila leaned close to Ava. "Would you like to learn a special kind of prayer? One that helps when things feel scary?" Ava nodded, her braids bobbing. "It's simple as breathing," Lila explained. "When you breathe in, think courage. When you breathe out, let go of fear, like this." She demonstrated, her weathered hands rising and falling with each breath. Ava tried it, her small shoulders relaxing slightly. "In, courage," she whispered. "Out, fear." "That's perfect, sweetheart." Later that night, after tucking Ava into bed, Marcus drove through the quiet streets to the school administration building. 3 cars waited in the empty lot. He recognized them as belonging to board chair William Preston and members Barbara Thompson and Richard Hayes. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus settled into an uncomfortable chair in the conference room. William Preston cleared his throat. "Marcus, we've known each other since Little League. Let's handle this the friendly way." He slid a paper across the table. "A mutual apology. Fresh start. We'll transfer Ava to Mrs. Peterson's class. She's always been good with different students." Marcus kept his voice steady. "Different?" Barbara Thompson jumped in. "This doesn't need to become some big civil rights crusade. Cheryl's been teaching here 20 years. She's just old-fashioned." "Old-fashioned doesn't excuse what she did to my daughter," Marcus said. "I've already recused myself. I want a fair investigation and mandatory staff training. Nothing more, nothing less." Richard Hayes leaned forward, his tie loose around his neck. "Be reasonable, Marcus. Headlines like this could hurt property values, tourism. And frankly," he paused, "small towns have long memories. Do you really want Ava to spend the next 10 years as that girl who caused all the trouble?" The threat hung in the air like smoke. Marcus stood slowly, straightening his jacket. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet," he said carefully. "But I think we're done here. Good night." Across town, in a small yellow house with peeling paint, Cheryl Whitman sat at her kitchen table while her mother Eleanor paced. "Don't you dare back down," Eleanor snapped, arthritis-curved fingers gripping her coffee mug. "These people move in and expect us to change everything overnight. Your classroom, your rules." Cheryl's hands shook slightly as she reached for her phone. "I called Tom Miller on the board. He said if we can prove Johnson threatened me." "Did he?" Eleanor's eyes gleamed. "Not exactly, but..." Cheryl opened her voice recorder app, scrolling through clips from that morning's meeting. With careful editing, certain phrases could sound different. Menacing, even. She played a snippet. "Will be documented." Another. "Consequences." And finally, "Handle this." Out of context, stripped of their full sentences about safety protocols and proper procedures, the words took on a darker tone. A small smile curved Cheryl's lips as she saved the edited audio file. "Maybe the state attorney general isn't as clean as he pretends to be." Eleanor squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "That's my girl. Show them what happens when they try to change our town." The clock on the kitchen wall ticked past midnight as Cheryl replayed the clips again and again, each repetition hardening her resolve. The morning sun painted long shadows across the library floor as Ava slipped through the door, her backpack clutched tight against her chest. Lila looked up from her desk with a warm smile that made the room feel softer somehow. "Good morning, sweetheart. Would you like to pick out a book while I make us some hot chocolate?" Ava nodded, her braids swaying as she moved toward the picture book section. Her small fingers traced along colorful spines until she found one that made her pause. The cover showed a garden full of different flowers, all growing together. "That's a lovely choice," Lila said, setting down 2 steaming paper cups. "It's called Every Garden Needs All Its Colors. Should we read it together?" They settled into the cushy reading corner chairs. As Lila's gentle voice brought the story to life, Ava's shoulders gradually relaxed. When they finished, Lila pulled out some construction paper and markers. "You know what might be nice? Making some special cards for your classmates. Sometimes the best way to make friends is to show kindness first." Ava's face brightened. She drew careful butterflies and flowers, adding rainbow colors and neat letters spelling out, I'm glad you're here. She made 3 cards, each one different, but equally cheerful. In class, Ava sat at her usual spot near the door, trying to make herself small. The substitute teacher, Mrs. Cooper, was writing math problems on the board when someone tapped Ava's desk. She looked up to see a boy with sandy hair and freckles holding out a blue crayon. I noticed you didn't have this color, he said softly. I'm Ethan. You can sit by me at lunch if you want. Ava blinked in surprise, then smiled, accepting the crayon. Thank you, she whispered back. The morning went smoothly until recess. As Ava colored at her desk, she heard some kids in the corner giggling and copying Ms. Whitman's mocking tone from that first day. Her chest tightened, but before she could shrink further, into herself, Mr. Ruiz appeared in the doorway with his cleaning cart. The veteran custodian's kind eyes took in the scene. He straightened his back, the way he must have done in uniform years ago. Hey now, he said firmly but gently. We speak like we're proud of ourselves in this school. Those words don't sound proud to me. The children fell silent, looking properly chastened. Mr. Ruiz gave Ava a small wink as he pushed his cart past. That afternoon, Marcus's polished shoes echoed down the hallway to Dr. Klein's office. The principal's smile seemed strained as they sat down. Mr. Johnson, we need to discuss some concerns that have been raised, Dr. Klein began, shuffling papers on his desk. Several parents feel that moving Ava to Mrs. Peterson's class might help restore calm. No, Marcus's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of granite. My daughter will not be pushed out of her assigned classroom because adults can't handle change. The solution isn't to move the child being targeted. It's to expect better from everyone else. Dr. Klein's mouth opened and closed a few times before he nodded stiffly. The afternoon sun was starting to dip when Ava climbed onto the bus for home. As they rounded the corner by the school sign, she pressed her face to the window. Her small fingers tightened around her backpack strap until her knuckles went white. There on the sidewalk stood a cluster of parents. They held handmade signs with words like, "No special treatment," and "Protect our teachers." Ava's lower lip trembled. But there was Lila too, standing straight and tall by the pickup area. When she saw Ava's face in the bus window, she moved closer. As Ava stepped down, Lila knelt to meet her eyes. "You are not alone," she said firmly, her weathered hand finding Ava's shoulder. Not for one single minute. Ava reached into her backpack and pulled out one of her kindness cards, offering it to Lila with shaky fingers. The old librarian's eyes grew misty as she read the careful letters. "I'm glad you're here." The small bedroom lamp cast a warm glow as Ava sat cross-legged on her bed, her butterfly journal open beside her. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Daddy, did I do something wrong? Is that why people are mad?" Marcus's heart squeezed tight. He settled on the edge of her bed, careful not to disturb the stuffed animals lined up like tiny guardians. "No, baby girl, you didn't do anything wrong at all. But Ms. Whitman has some mean ideas in her head," Marcus said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups carry wrong thoughts about others, like a heavy backpack full of rocks. That's their burden to fix, not yours." Ava traced the butterfly she'd drawn that day with her finger. "Can't we just leave, go to another school?" "We could," Marcus admitted, "but running away doesn't fix what's wrong. The school needs to change, not you. You belong right where you are." Early Friday morning, before most teachers had arrived, Marcus walked through Maple Hollow Elementary's quiet halls. His shoes echoed on the freshly polished floors as he made his way to the office. He'd spent half the night drafting a detailed email to the independent investigator, requesting security footage, staff interviews, and strict anti-retaliation measures. Dr. Klein intercepted him before he reached the main office. "Mr. Johnson, could we talk privately?" In the principal's office, surrounded by generic motivational posters, Dr. Klein leaned forward with what he probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "We've found a wonderful opening at Wilson Elementary. Just temporary, of course, until things settle down." "No." Marcus kept his voice steady. "My daughter stays right here. Mr. Johnson, surely you can see this would be easier." "Easier isn't always right," Marcus said. "And the problem isn't Ava. It's adults who need to do better." After leaving Dr. Klein's office, Marcus found Lila in the library, organizing books for the morning. Frank was nearby, checking door hinges. They both agreed immediately to provide sworn statements about what they'd witnessed. "I've been keeping notes," Lila said, pulling out a small spiral notebook. "Little things that might seem small alone, but add up." She read from her neat handwriting. Tuesday afternoon, Sarah Miller's mother telling another parent that certain people are ruining the school. Wednesday morning, substitute Mrs. Hayes saying she was told to move Ava's desk to the back corner. Thursday at pickup, Jennifer Walsh whispering troublemaker when Ava walked past. Frank nodded gravely. "I heard that Walsh woman too. Some folks think they're being subtle. They forget these old ears still work just fine." The school day unfolded slowly. Ava kept her head down, working quietly at her isolated desk. At lunch, she sat with Ethan, who showed her his collection of funny erasers shaped like animals. They didn't talk much, but his presence was like a shield against the stares and whispers. Lila watched from her library desk as children passed in the hall. She noticed how some teachers hurried their classes past, how certain parents lingered at classroom doors with narrowed eyes. The tension hung in the air like storm clouds gathering. That evening, Marcus stood at the stove stirring spaghetti sauce while Ava colored at the kitchen table. The radio played softly in the background until a familiar voice cut through the music. Coming up next on Maple Hollow tonight, the story everyone's talking about, a beloved teacher with 30 years of service, suddenly targeted by the state's top prosecutor. Is this about justice or power? Stay tuned. Marcus reached over and turned the volume down, his hand steady despite the anger tightening his chest. He glanced at Ava, still focused on her drawing, adding, "Careful swirls of purple and blue to create butterfly wings." "What are you working on there, sweetheart?" he asked. "It's a brave butterfly," she said, without looking up. "Lila says butterflies start out scared in their cocoons, but they come out beautiful and strong." Marcus stirred the sauce, watching his daughter's quiet determination. The radio host's voice faded to a murmur, but the implications were clear. This story was about to get much bigger, much louder, and somehow they would have to weather it together. The kitchen timer chimed. Marcus turned off the stove and reached for bowls, going through the normal motions of their dinner routine. Behind him, Ava hummed softly as she added the finishing touches to her butterfly, her small world still anchored by crayons and paper, while the adult world around them threatened to erupt. The Saturday morning sun streamed through Marcus's kitchen windows, warming the cheerful yellow curtains Ava had picked out herself. A gentle knock at the door made Ava look up from her coloring book, her eyes brightening when she saw Mrs. Hart's familiar gray hair through the window. "I brought something special," Lila said, holding up a decorated tin. The scent of vanilla and sugar wafted through the air as she opened it. "Butterflies!" Ava exclaimed, her small fingers hovering over the delicate sugar cookies. Marcus pulled out chairs while Lila spread wax paper on the table. She arranged little bowls of colored icing and sprinkles in rainbow shades. "Now," Lila said, showing Ava how to hold the piping bag, "gentle squeezes make the prettiest patterns." While Ava concentrated on decorating, her tongue peeking out in focus, Lila's eyes met Marcus's. "How are things feeling at school, sweetheart?" Ava's hand paused. She set down the icing bag carefully. "Sometimes I get scared," she admitted in a small voice, "but I still want to be nice. The mean feeling doesn't help anything get better." Marcus reached over and squeezed her shoulder. Lila dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "You know," Marcus said slowly, "when I was a teenager, something happened that made me very angry." He glanced at Lila. "I was shopping for my mom's birthday present. The store manager followed me around for 20 minutes, watching everything I touched." Ava's eyes went wide. "Why?" "Because some people judge others before knowing them." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "I wanted to yell. I wanted to knock things off shelves. But my dad taught me something important. Anger can be right, but what we do with it matters most." Lila nodded. "That's why we need to give everyone, especially the children, something good to focus on." She pulled out a sketch pad. "What if we started a butterfly wall at school? Kids could post notes about kindness they see, or write about times they were brave." Ava's face lit up. "Could I draw butterflies for it?" "You could help design the whole thing," Lila smiled. They spent the next hour planning, Ava's enthusiasm growing with each idea. The kitchen filled with laughter and the sweet smell of frosting. Later that afternoon, Marcus pushed a shopping cart through Maple Grove Market, while Ava read items from their list: bread, milk, orange juice. In aisle 7, between the cereal boxes and granola bars, they saw her. Ms. Whitman stood examining a box of crackers, her cart blocking most of the aisle. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Ms. Whitman's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Johnson," she said softly. Her gaze slid to Ava, then back to Marcus. "Careful now. People don't like bullies." Ava's small hand found Marcus's, squeezing tight. Without a word, he guided their cart in a careful turn and walked away, Ava close to his side. That evening, after Ava was tucked in with her stuffed elephant and butterfly nightlight, Marcus checked his email. The subject line made his stomach tighten. "Notice of Preliminary Ethics Review." He opened it, reading quickly. A formal complaint had been filed before the independent investigation had even started. The trap was springing shut, just as he'd feared it might. Marcus rubbed his temples, remembering Ava's words from that morning. The mean feeling doesn't help anything get better. He took a deep breath and began gathering his documentation, determined to face this challenge the same way he'd taught his daughter, with truth and steady courage. The morning sun streamed through stained glass windows, casting gentle colors across the wooden pews of Maple Hollow First Baptist Church. Marcus and Ava sat in the last row, her small hand tucked into his larger one. Pastor Williams's voice carried clearly through the quiet sanctuary. "Truth," he said, looking over his wire-rimmed glasses, "doesn't need shouting to be strong. Like a whisper of wind that shapes mountains over time, truth stands firm in gentleness." Ava's yellow dress matched the sunbeams, and she drew little butterflies in the margins of the church bulletin. Marcus noticed how some people kept glancing back at them, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. After the final hymn, as people filed out into the fresh autumn air, elderly Mrs. Cooper touched Marcus's arm. "We're praying for you both," she whispered, pressing a wrapped peppermint into Ava's hand. Mr. Thompson, who'd taught in the high school for 40 years, nodded firmly. "Some of us remember when this town made other wrong choices. Stand your ground, son." But as they walked toward their car, Sarah Miller, mother of 3 and president of the PTA, stepped into their path. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Marcus," she said quietly, "this town protects its own. Always has. Think about that before you push harder." Back home, Marcus settled into his home office for the 2 o'clock video call. Lila arrived early, bringing tea and her neat stack of written observations. The computer screen flickered to life, showing Ms. Rodriguez, the independent investigator, and Dr. Chen, the child advocate liaison. "Let's begin with the timeline," Ms. Rodriguez said, her voice steady and professional. "Mr. Johnson, please walk us through Tuesday morning's events." Marcus spoke clearly, emotion controlled but evident. "We arrived at 7:45. Ms. Whitman's initial reaction to seeing Ava was visible stiffening. At approximately 8:15, she made Ava stand and—" His voice caught slightly. "She mocked my daughter's voice, made her repeat her name multiple times as though it were a joke. Then she—" He took a breath. "She spat near Ava's feet and said, 'You don't belong in my classroom.'" Lila leaned forward. "I witnessed the final part from the doorway," she added. The contempt in her voice was unmistakable. Marcus pulled out a manila folder. "I also have this note left under my windshield Wednesday night." He held up the paper reading, "Leave our town alone. It's been documented and photographed." The child advocate spoke up. "We'll need to interview Ava, but only with a specialized interviewer present. We don't want to re-traumatize her." "What protections can we put in place immediately?" Marcus asked. Ms. Rodriguez consulted her notes. "I'll request supervised pickup and drop-off, a written anti-bullying directive to all staff, and a neutral classroom monitor. The hallway security footage from Tuesday should be preserved immediately." As the meeting continued, Ava's voice drifted in from the living room where she was reading. The sound seemed to strengthen Marcus's resolve. Across town, in a small house with peeling paint, Ms. Whitman sat at her kitchen table. The room was dim except for her laptop screen's blue glow. Her mother's collection of decorative plates lined the walls, watching like silent judges. She pressed play on her phone's voice recorder app. The Tuesday meeting played back, tinny through the speaker. Marcus's voice. This situation, her own voice, interrupting. "I never—" Marcus again, firm but controlled. This won't be swept away. She played it 3 more times, then used a free audio program to clip just those last 4 words. She saved the file, then stood up and walked to the mirror hanging in her narrow hallway. Her reflection stared back, tired but determined. "He threatened me," she practiced, making her voice quiver. "I was scared." She tried again, softer. "I've never felt so intimidated." The laptop hummed on the table behind her, the edited audio file waiting to tell its crooked version of truth. In Marcus's living room, Ava was curled up with a book about butterflies, unaware of the storm building around her father's quiet strength. Outside, birds called in the maple trees that gave the town its name, and the Sunday afternoon light painted everything in warm, deceptive gold. Monday morning brought a crisp breeze that rustled the maple trees lining Maple Hollow Elementary's walkway. Ava Johnson's braids swayed as she walked, her backpack full of paper butterflies she and Lila had spent Sunday afternoon creating. Each one held a message of hope written in careful second-grade handwriting. "Remember," Lila said, meeting them at the front door, her grey hair neat under a purple scarf. "Every butterfly we put up is like planting a tiny seed of kindness." Frank Ruiz nodded from where he was carefully polishing the glass doors. His work jacket had a small American flag pin, and his kind eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled at Ava. In the main hallway, a fresh sheet of blue paper stretched across the wall, ready for its transformation. Dr. Klein had approved the butterfly wall project after some persuading from Lila, though his signature on the form had been hesitant. "Where should we put the first one?" Lila asked, kneeling beside Ava. Ava studied the empty space, then pointed to the center. "Right in the middle," she said softly, "so everyone can see." She pulled out a yellow paper butterfly, its edges carefully cut despite her young hands. The words, "Everyone belongs," spread across its wings in purple marker. "That's perfect, honey," Lila said, helping her with the tape. In the classroom, Ethan Miller waited at his desk, his fingers fidgeting with a pencil. When Ava pulled out more butterflies, his face lit up. "Can I help?" asked, his stutter less pronounced in his excitement. "Of course," Ava smiled, handing him a blue one. Together they added 3 more butterflies to the wall. "Be brave," read one. "Kindness matters," said another. "Friends come in all colors," declared the third. Other children started drifting over, curious. Sarah from the front row asked if she could have a butterfly to decorate, then Michael, then Katie. Soon a small cluster of second graders surrounded the wall, their chatter mixing with the sound of tape being pulled and paper rustling. Frank Ruiz moved his cleaning cart nearby, pretending to dust but keeping watch. His presence, quiet but steady, seemed to discourage any unkind whispers. At lunchtime, Marcus sat in his downtown office, phone pressed to his ear as he listened to the board chair's latest excuses. "The community needs time to process," she was saying, her voice smooth as oil. Any official statement now would only inflame tensions. Marcus's free hand tightened on his desk. "My daughter needs protection now," he replied, keeping his voice level. "The school must take a clear stand against discrimination, issue the statement, confirm her safety plan." "Marcus," the chair sighed, "you're not seeing the bigger picture. Some parents are very concerned about changes to their children's learning environment. The only change," Marcus said firmly, "should be making that environment safer for every child. We'll revisit this in a few weeks when things calm down. That's not acceptable. It's the best we can offer right now." After school, Ava practically bounced toward the library, more butterflies tucked in her folder. The morning's success had given her a spark of joy that lasted through math and reading time. But as she rounded the corner with "Lila," they both stopped short. The wall, so bright and hopeful that morning, now had gaps like missing teeth. Ava's yellow butterfly, the very first one, hung crooked and torn. Lila's hand found Ava's shoulder as they approached. In the nearby trash can they found the missing butterflies, crumpled, some ripped completely in half. "Oh, sweetheart," Lila breathed, watching Ava's face fall. But Ava surprised her. Instead of crying, the little girl walked to the trash can and carefully began retrieving the damaged butterflies. Her small hands smoothed each one with determined gentleness. "If they can rip them," she whispered, "we can make more." Lila blinked back tears of her own, even as she helped Ava rescue the paper messages. With trembling fingers, she pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to Marcus. Retaliation has started. They sat together at a library table, using clear tape to repair what they could. Frank Ruiz appeared with a fresh roll of masking tape and wordlessly helped them rehang the mended butterflies. Maybe tomorrow we can add twice as many, Ava suggested, her voice small but determined. Yes, Lila agreed, watching this brave child refuse to let cruelty win. We'll fill the whole wall with hope. The afternoon sun slanted through the library windows, catching the torn edges of paper wings that refused to stay grounded, no matter how many times they were pushed down. The library felt different on Tuesday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, warming the worn carpet where Lila had spread out fresh sheets of colored paper. 6 students sat cross-legged in a circle, including Ava and Ethan, their hands busy with markers and scissors. Sometimes things get torn down, Lila said softly, smoothing a crumpled butterfly. But we can always make something new. Frank Ruiz appeared in the doorway, his grey maintenance uniform neat as always. In his weathered hands, he carried clear packing tape and a rainbow stack of construction paper. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he saw the children working together. Found these in the supply room, he said, setting everything down carefully. Thought we might need backup. Ava watched him pull a small index card from his pocket. His handwriting was careful, each letter printed clearly. Courage is quiet. He taped it near the bottom of the wall at child height, then stepped back without fanfare. The other students kept working, some humming quietly as they drew. No one made Ava feel different or special. They just shared markers and helped each other spell words like friendship and welcome. Later that evening, Marcus sat across from Sarah Chen, a reporter from the Maple Hollow Gazette. The local cafe buzzed with after-dinner customers, providing just enough background noise for privacy without isolation. I want to be very clear, Marcus said, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug. I've formally recused myself from any official involvement. This needs to be handled through proper channels, independently. Sarah nodded, her notebook open, but her pen still. And the complaints about using your position? I'm here as a parent, Marcus replied steadily. This is about a child's safety, not politics, not power, just making sure every student feels secure in their classroom. The school announced a listening night for Thursday, Sarah mentioned. Will you attend? Marcus chose his words carefully. As a parent, yes. My daughter is part of this community. We all need to work together toward healing. Back at Maple Hollow Elementary, Dr. Klein's recorded message went out to every family's phone. Join us Thursday evening for an important community conversation. Together, we can build understanding and move forward. Response flooded in immediately. The PTA Facebook group lit up with comments. Finally, time to talk about what's really happening. My kids say the butterfly wall is beautiful. Who does he think he is, causing all this trouble? Maybe we can actually fix things. The divide was clear in every thread, every reaction, every heated reply. As night settled over town, Ms. Whitman's car pulled into the empty lot behind Jimmy's diner. Another vehicle was already waiting. Board member Tom Fletcher's silver SUV. She slipped into his passenger seat, clutching her phone. Listen to this, she whispered, pressing play on a carefully edited clip. Marcus's voice came through, stripped of context. This won't be swept away. Tom Fletcher's face was half hidden in shadow. And you're sure about the timing? Right before the listening night, Ms. Whitman insisted. When everyone's already emotional, they'll believe me. They'll have to. Fletcher's fingers drummed against the steering wheel. Seconds ticked by, marked only by the distant hum of traffic. Finally he nodded. Ms. Whitman's smile was sharp in the darkness, like scissors through paper, like a knife through trust, like the quiet click of a trap being set. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as Marcus flipped another golden pancake. The sizzle and sweet smell filled their cozy kitchen, making it feel like any other Thursday. But this wasn't just any Thursday. Ava sat at the counter, her legs swinging beneath her, practicing the words she'd chosen for tonight's listening session at school. Butterflies can't choose their wings, but we can choose our hearts. One more time, Marcus asked gently, sliding a heart-shaped pancake onto her plate. Ava took a deep breath. Butterflies can't choose their wings. She faltered slightly. But we can choose our hearts. Marcus finished with her, his voice warm and encouraging. That's beautiful, sweetheart. And remember, You don't have to say anything if you change your mind. No pressure. I want to try, Ava said quietly, cutting her pancake into tiny pieces. Miss Lila says sometimes being brave means just showing up. The day moved forward like molasses. At the school, Dr. Klein paced the gymnasium, checking microphones and adjusting chairs for the evening's meeting. Every few minutes she glanced at her phone as if expecting bad news. Lila spent her morning in the library, carefully mounting the children's butterfly artwork onto display boards. Her weathered hands smoothed each colorful drawing with care, making sure every child's work looked its very best. Some butterflies were wobbly, others precise, but each one carried a message of hope or kindness. Need any help? Frank appeared in the doorway, his custodian's keys jingling softly. Could you help me carry these to the gym? Lila asked, grateful for his steady presence. In Marcus's downtown office, his phone buzzed with another ethics inquiry. He answered factually, professionally, keeping his voice level even as frustration built behind his eyes. He'd been clear about his recusal, about following proper channels. Still, the questions came. Back at school, Ava's substitute teacher, Mrs. Bennett, handed out squares of colored paper for one final butterfly project. These will be part of tonight's display, she explained. Draw or write whatever's in your heart. Ethan scooted his desk closer to Ava's. I'll sit with you tonight, he said, his slight stutter not diminishing his determination. If you want. Ava nodded, carefully drawing her butterfly. She chose yellow, the color of sunshine and hope, and wrote her practiced words in careful second-grade printing. Frank made his rounds, checking door locks and security cameras. He positioned chairs so there would be clear paths to exits, his military training showing in how he thought about safety. When he passed Ava's classroom, he gave her a gentle nod. As afternoon faded into evening, families began arriving at the school. Cars filled the parking lot, and voices echoed in the hallways. Some faces were kind, others closed and hard. Parents clustered in small groups, whispering behind their hands. The gymnasium lights hummed overhead. The display boards stood ready, hundreds of paper butterflies creating a rainbow wall of children's hopes. The podium looked too tall, too official for such small wishes. Ava stood in the hallway, her yellow dress matching her butterfly drawing. The noise from the gym seemed to grow louder and louder. Her hand began to tremble. Remember, Lila whispered, taking one of Ava's hands in her soft, warm grip. Courage doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when we are scared. Marcus took Ava's other hand, his strong fingers gentle around her tiny ones. We're right here with you, baby girl, both of us. Together they walked toward the gymnasium doors. Ava's shoes made small tapping sounds on the polished floor. The crowd's murmur grew louder as they approached. Dr. Klein stood at the podium, tapping the microphone. The feedback whine made everyone wince. Chairs creaked as people turned to watch Ava and her supporters enter. Frank stood near the side door, his posture relaxed but alert. Mrs. Bennett waved from where she sat with Ethan and some other students. The butterflies seemed to flutter on the wall behind them, caught in the breeze from the ventilation system. As they reached their seats in the front row, Ava squeezed both hands holding hers, one small and wrinkled with wisdom, one strong and sure with love. She took her seat between Lila and Marcus as Dr. Klein cleared her throat and began to speak. The gymnasium at Maple Hollow Elementary hummed with nervous energy as families filed in under the fluorescent lights. The familiar smell of floor wax and old wood mixed with the tension in the air. On the big projection screen at the front, a colorful collection of paper butterflies fluttered in a gentle slideshow, each one carrying a child's message about kindness and belonging. Ava sat in the front row, between Marcus and Lila, her yellow dress crisp and her braids neat. Her small hands twisted in her lap as she watched more people arrive. The index card with her practiced words trembled slightly between her fingers. Remember, Marcus whispered, you can stop any time. Lila reached over and patted Ava's shoulder. Just like we practiced in the library, sweet pea. No rush. Dr. Klein stepped up to the podium, tapping the microphone. The feedback made everyone wince. Welcome to our community listening night, she said, her voice carrying that careful, principled tone. We'll begin with our students sharing their hopes for our school. When Dr. Klein called Ava's name, the room went quiet. That heavy kind of quiet that makes even breathing feel loud. Marcus gave her hand one last squeeze as she stood. Ava's shoes made tiny squeaking sounds on the gym floor as she walked to the microphone. Frank Ruiz, standing near the wall in his custodian's uniform, gave her a gentle nod. She had to stand on tiptoes to reach the microphone, even after Dr. Klein lowered it. "Butterflies," Ava started, then stopped to take a deep breath, just like Lila had taught her. "Butterflies can't choose their wings, but we can choose our hearts." For a moment, the silence held. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the room, a single person started clapping. Like a wave, the applause spread until it filled the whole gym. Ava's eyes went wide with surprise, and the tiniest smile tugged at her lips as she hurried back to her seat. Marcus wrapped an arm around her shoulders, fighting the proud tears that threatened to spill. One by one, community members stood to speak. Mr. Patterson, a Vietnam veteran with steel-gray hair, pushed himself up from his chair using his cane. "I fought for this country," he said, his voice gravelly but clear. "Fought alongside men of every color, and I'm telling you now, we got to keep learning to be better. That's what makes America strong." Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught at Maple Hollow for 30 years before retiring, spoke next. Her hands shook as she gripped the podium. "I stayed quiet too many times when I should have spoken up. I won't make that mistake again, not when a child is hurting." A young mother named Sarah Chen stood up right where she was sitting, her preschooler balanced on her hip. "My 5-year-old came home asking why Ava was treated differently. What am I supposed to tell him? That some people think it's okay to be cruel? No, we have to do better." The momentum built as more people shared. The substitute teacher described how bright and kind Ava was in class. 3 parents offered to help monitor pickup times. Even Ethan's mom stood up to say her son had never been happier than since becoming Ava's friend. Finally, Dr. Klein returned to the podium. Her usual polished demeanor cracked as she gripped the sides of the wooden stand. "I need to apologize," she said, looking directly at Ava and Marcus. "I failed to protect a student in my care. That is unacceptable, and I am deeply sorry." The board chair stepped up next, announcing immediate changes. Mandatory anti-bias training for all staff, classroom monitors to ensure student safety, and a new written anti-discrimination policy that would be posted in every room. Marcus felt the tight knot in his chest begin to loosen. He watched Ava's face as she looked at the butterfly wall, her eyes bright with hope. For one precious hour it felt like real change was possible, like their small town was choosing to grow instead of hiding behind old prejudices. The meeting ended with children adding fresh butterflies to the wall. Ava and Ethan walked up together, their artwork matching in purple and yellow. Community members stopped to shake Marcus's hand, some offering quiet words of support. Later that night, after tucking an exhausted but happy Ava into bed, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a cup of cooling coffee. His phone buzzed with a notification. Opening it, his stomach dropped. The screen showed a social media post going viral, a video clip of him from the Tuesday meeting with Ms. Whitman. But something was wrong. The audio had been cut and rearranged, making his calm statement about justice sound like a threat. Ms. Whitman's voice played over it, trembling. "He said he would make me pay." Marcus's phone started lighting up with messages. By midnight, an ethics complaint had been formally filed. When he looked out his front window at dawn, a TV news van sat at the end of his driveway, its satellite dish reaching toward the grey morning sky. The morning news played quietly in the kitchen as Marcus made Ava's breakfast. She stood in the doorway in her pajamas, her face crumpling as she heard the word investigation from the TV. "Daddy?" Her voice was small and scared. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "Did I ruin everything?" The morning sun hadn't quite cleared the trees when the EE news van's lights clicked on, casting harsh beams through Marcus's kitchen windows. He pulled the curtains closed, protecting Ava from the intrusive glare as she pushed her untouched oatmeal around the bowl. "Baby, you need to eat something," he said softly. Ava's lower lip trembled. "They're saying mean things about you because of me." Marcus set down his coffee and knelt beside her chair. His tie was perfectly straight, his manner calm, but worry lines creased his forehead. "Look at me, sweetheart." He waited until her dark eyes met his. "You didn't create this. You only told the truth. And the truth matters more than anything they're saying." The house phone rang, his personal line, not his work cell. Marcus squeezed Ava's shoulder before answering. His attorney's familiar voice came through, followed by the formal tone of the ethics investigator on the conference call. "Mr. Johnson, given the nature of these allegations, we advise minimal public comment," his attorney said. "Document everything, but let the school investigation proceed independently. We can't risk any appearance of you using your office to influence the outcome." Marcus watched Ava push away from the table, her breakfast cold and forgotten. "I understand," he said quietly, "but my priority is my daughter's well-being." After the call, he found Ava in her room, clutching her butterfly journal. The morning news droned from the living room TV. "State Attorney General accused of threatening teacher." "Daddy," her voice was small, "did I ruin everything?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Marcus crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt again, looking directly into her eyes. "No, baby. Never. You did exactly right. You told the truth when someone hurt you." That's what brave people do. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of calls and careful statements. Marcus drove Ava to school through a back entrance to avoid the cameras, grateful when Frank Ruiz appeared to walk her inside. That afternoon, as the hallways emptied, Lila Hart unlocked the library doors for a small, determined group. Frank Ruiz stood near the window, his custodian's keys jingling softly. Sarah Miller, Ethan's mother, sat with her hands clasped tight. The substitute teacher, Miss Peters, perched nervously on a chair's edge. Tom Chen, a PTA dad who worked in IT, opened his laptop with purpose. "We all know something's wrong with that recording," Lila said, her voice steady despite her anxiety. "Ms. Whitman's clip doesn't match what we heard in that meeting." Tom nodded, pulling up the viral audio file. "Listen here. The sentence cuts off unnaturally." He pointed to the waveform display. "See these sharp breaks? That's not how natural speech looks. This has been spliced." Sarah Miller leaned forward. "Can we prove it?" "Maybe," Tom typed rapidly. "Most conference rooms automatically back up recordings for meeting minutes. If Dr. Klein's office uses standard hardware—" "It does," Frank confirmed. "I help maintain it. And there's more. The hallway security camera outside that room records audio too. Policy for student safety meetings." Ms. Peters spoke up softly. "I've seen how Ms. Whitman treats records. She's selective about what she keeps." They worked methodically through the afternoon. Tom accessed the conference system's archive, while Frank retrieved the security footage. Side by side, the truth emerged in clear digital traces. The full meeting, Marcus's measured tone, Ms. Whitman's hostile responses. "Look at the timestamps," Tom said. "The viral clip cuts out his whole statement about recusal and independent investigation. It's a deliberate misrepresentation." Lila made careful notes as they worked, documenting each piece of evidence. By evening, they had multiple secure copies of the unedited recordings, a detailed timeline, and signed statements from everyone present. Late Friday night, Marcus sat at his desk reviewing their findings. His phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "Monday morning board meeting. We're ready." He looked at the evidence laid out before him. Truth captured in pixels and waveforms, backed by witnesses and timestamps. Not weapons for revenge, but tools for justice. Marcus thought of Ava's brave little voice at the listening night. "We can choose our hearts." He began preparing his presentation, determined to answer deception with dignity, lies with clear evidence. The path forward wasn't about power or punishment. It was about protecting what mattered: truth, fairness, and a little girl's right to feel safe at school. On his desk, one of Ava's paper butterflies caught the lamplight, its simple message clear: "Everyone belongs." The Monday morning sun filtered through the high windows of Maple Hollow Elementary's gymnasium, casting long shadows across rows of metal folding chairs. The space felt smaller than usual, cramped with tension and bodies. Television cameras lined the back wall, their red recording lights blinking like watchful eyes. Marcus Johnson straightened his tie and touched the manila folder on the podium, each paper inside carefully organized. His attorney sat quietly in the front row, notepad ready. The independent investigator's summary lay on top, its official seal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Ms. Whitman entered, her chin held high despite her pale face. She took a seat near her supporters, who closed ranks around her like a wall. Dr. Klein fidgeted at the board table, his usual polished demeanor cracking at the edges. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. "I'm here today as Ava Johnson's father. As you know, I formally recused myself from any legal proceedings related to this matter weeks ago." He gestured to his attorney. "The documents confirming this have been distributed to the board." The PTA dad, Tom Wheeler, moved to the laptop connected to the projection system. His fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced ease. "Before we proceed," he said, "I'd like to play the complete audio from last Tuesday's meeting." The room fell silent as the recording began. Marcus's actual words filled the space. "My daughter deserves to feel safe in her classroom. I expect appropriate action to protect her and any other child from discrimination. This won't be swept away, but it will be handled through proper channels." Ms. Whitman's supporters shifted uncomfortably. The edited version that had gone viral made those same words sound like threats by cutting them apart and rearranging them. Then came the security footage. The gymnasium speakers carried Ava's small voice, then Ms. Whitman's sharp response. The camera angle showed everything: the teacher's stance, Ava's shrinking posture, the cruel twist of events that no one could deny. "Stop this," Ms. Whitman called out, standing. "This is harassment." The board chair, Mrs. Peterson, raised her hand. "Let it play." The footage continued, showing Ms. Whitman speaking to Dr. Klein moments later, declaring nothing had happened. The timeline was devastating in its simplicity. Truth, then lie, then cover-up. Dr. Klein cleared his throat. His voice shook slightly. "I need to acknowledge my role in this situation. The board—" He glanced at Mrs. Peterson, then straightened his shoulders. "The board pressured me to avoid scandal at any cost. I chose wrong. I failed to protect a student." Mrs. Peterson's face seemed to cave in on itself. The careful makeup couldn't hide how the color drained from her cheeks. Ms. Whitman tried to interrupt again, but the evidence kept coming. Documentation of the edited audio, timestamps proving manipulation, witness statements from staff and students. The board moved quickly after that. The vote was unanimous: immediate termination, mandatory district-wide anti-discrimination training, new safety protocols, and an outside monitor to oversee implementation for the entire semester. As people began to file out, Ms. Whitman stood alone near the gym doors. Her hands trembled as she watched Ava walking past with Lila Hart. Something in her face had changed, the defensive anger replaced by something raw and real. "Ava," she said softly, "I was wrong. What I did, what I said, it was wrong. No excuses." Ava looked up at her father, then at Lila, before reaching into her backpack. She pulled out one of her butterfly cards, the ones she'd been making all week. Without speaking, she held it out to Ms. Whitman. The former teacher took it with unsteady fingers. Written in careful second-grade handwriting were 5 words: "Tell the truth. Do better." The moment hung between them, heavy with things unsaid. Ava didn't offer forgiveness. Some things take time and proof, but she had offered something else, a chance to change. The morning sun painted long stripes across Maple Hollow Elementary's polished floors as Marcus Johnson walked his daughter Ava through the front doors. 6 months had passed since that terrible first day, and the change was visible everywhere you looked. "Look, Daddy." Ava pointed to the permanent butterfly mural that now stretched across the main hallway, protected behind gleaming glass. Her voice carried none of the old fear. "There must be hundreds now." Marcus smiled, taking in the kaleidoscope of colorful notes and drawings that had transformed this space. Veterans' messages about courage sat beside grandparents' wisdom about kindness. Children's wobbly handwriting, mixed with typed cards from teachers who'd learned to stand up instead of stay quiet. Ava had grown taller since September, and not just in inches. She walked with her shoulders straight, her yellow cardigan bright against dark braids, clutching her well-worn butterfly journal like a treasured friend. The book had seen her through the worst days, and now held her victories too. "Good morning, sunshine," Lila Hart's warm voice called from the library doorway. The older woman's eyes crinkled with genuine joy as she opened her arms for Ava's hug. Frank Ruiz appeared from his morning rounds, reliable as sunrise. The veteran custodian offered Ava his signature gentle salute, which she returned with a grin that lit up her whole face. "How are those new art supplies working out?" he asked, nodding at the fresh sketches peeking from her journal. "I'm saving the special markers for today's assembly," Ava said. "Want to see what I drew for it?" While Ava showed Frank her latest creation, Marcus took in the school's transformation. Anti-bullying posters shared wall space with student artwork celebrating diversity. A clear schedule listed classroom monitors and their training credentials. Through an open office door, he glimpsed the new principal in training actually sitting with a concerned parent, giving them full attention instead of rushed dismissal. His phone buzzed with a message from his office. The Ethics Review Board had officially closed their investigation, citing the unedited evidence that had cleared his name months ago. Marcus slipped the phone away without comment. That battle was past. This morning belonged to better things. The assembly bell chimed, and families began filling the gym. Ava straightened her cardigan, checked her journal one last time and walked to her seat near the front. When the principal called her name, she moved to the podium without hesitation. "I'd like to place the final butterfly of this season," she said clearly into the microphone. Her small hands lifted a carefully decorated paper shape. "This one is for everyone who chose to be brave, the grown-ups who told the truth, the kids who shared their friendship, and all the people who helped make our school feel safe." She pressed the butterfly onto the display board, its wings catching the morning light. "I'm glad I stayed," she said simply, and those 4 words carried the weight of everything they'd overcome. In the back row, barely noticeable, sat Ms. Whitman. She looked different now, humbler, somehow smaller without her old sharp edges. The former teacher was halfway through her mandated training, working limited hours in a supervised community program. Tears slid down her cheeks as she watched Ava speak, but she made no move to draw attention to herself. Some lessons, Marcus reflected, were learned best in silence. The assembly concluded with a song about belonging, young voices filling the gym with hope. As people began to file out, Marcus found Ava's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, making the great butterfly mural shimmer like stained glass. Beside them, Lila's lips moved in a silent prayer of thanksgiving, not just for Ava's healing, but for a town that had finally chosen to become better than its past. The morning light caught the tears in her eyes, turning them to gold. "Ready for class?" Marcus asked his daughter. Ava nodded, her butterfly journal hugged close. "Ready for everything," she answered and led the way forward into their hard-won peace.